So
We're
let's go
still,
ahead. Let's go ahead and get started. I always like to reward those that are on time. So I just want to say welcome to our webinar, Reducing Microplastics in Your Home. My name is Randy Penn. I am one of the faculty members at the University of Florida Extension here in Sarasota County. I do a lot of education around waste reduction, recycling, and reducing plastics is a big component of that as well. And I'm joined by my colleague, if you want to introduce yourself, Maria.
I'm Dr. Maria Portelis Ramito. I see some familiar names. I am the Family Consumer Sciences Agent here in Sarasota, Florida, and I teach a variety of classes, a lot of age-friendly classes, as well as disaster prep, food safety, and so forth. But today we're going to be all about looking at ways to reduce plastics in our home. So let's get started, Randy. So, the University of Florida is an equal opportunity institution. We do have the captions on if you need to use those, if they're any kind of assistance to you. And if you do have a complaint about this program, please contact us and we will send you out the link to complete. So the University of Florida is a land grant university. And with that, we have several program areas. We're a partnership between Sarasota County, the University of Florida, and the USDA. And you might ask yourself, how did that happen? How can the University of Florida actually be in Sarasota County? Well, because it is a land grant university and part of the Morrill Act, President Abraham Lincoln established land-grant universities, one in each state, to provide the most recent scientific research to farmers. And it has just grown to also include not only agriculture, but as well as community development, green gardening and landscaping, youth development, natural resources, and nutrition and healthy living. These are just some of our programs that we offer just in our office. But thank you for joining us today. And feel free to take any photos of any of the presentation that you might find helpful. So here are some of the things that we're going to talk about in today's presentation. Randy's going to cover the 7 most common types of plastics. What are microplastics? We're going to define that and talk specifically about the difference of primary versus secondary. The issue of plastics in our environment, common plastic products that we can find in our home. Why is plastic or packaging so necessary? Action steps that we can do. What can and cannot be recycled, and just general 5 takeaways.
Okay, so I'll pick up on this. I mentioned that I do a lot with recycling and waste reduction as part of my programs here. And so I just kind of wanted to give just that general overview look of common plastics and the numbering system that we encounter with the different products that we get at home. Plastics are labeled 1 through 7. They have a little triangle on the bottle or on the container that you can kind of see in there. And they're listed here in the photo. And they range from, ones that are recyclable to ones that kind of are not. I'll talk more about what can and can't be recycled at the beginning, but these are really the ones we encounter a lot. Number 1 are like plastic bottles that we get. Number 2 are the high density plastics, the harder caps and things. And those are the most 2 common ones we go through and see within our homes. We also encounter some of the PVC piping, which is number 3. You might see some of the number 5 containers, which is kind of the black containers for food items that we have. And then styrofoam is number 6. So those are some of the different items that we have, and some are recyclable and some are a little bit more nuanced as how they are being recycled as we go through. Got a couple people kind of coming in there. Let me go ahead and admit them, and we'll keep moving on. Now, microplastics are kind of a subset of plastics. Really, any of those plastics listed on that 1 through 7 can become microplastics. Microplastics are defined by any plastic particle that is no larger than 5 millimeters. So a small fragments of plastic is what they have. And if you're interested in reading more about some of the microplastics and some of the research, a great place to go is the website here, Ask IFAS. We have these EDIS documents that are researched by our professors on campus and throughout the state, and they do a little bit more in depth about microplastics, but kind of pulling some of that information out. Really, they're broken down into two main categories of microplastics. There's these primary microplastics, and then there are secondary microplastics. So let's kind of take a look at each one of those. So starting with the primary microplastics, these are small, less than 5 millimeter plastics that are actually designed to be small. They are used in what are known as nurdles, which are these small pellets that you see pictured there. Those are used in the manufacture of different plastics. They're melted down and molded into different products that we use. So they're intended to be that way. There's also things that they use these for inside of pillows and plush toys, and think of a bean bag or something like that. So they're kind of filler type material. They also come in the form of microbeads. And these are kind of, at one point, part of personal care products in a large volume. I'll talk a little bit about how those have been phased out, but they were at one point in our toothpaste, deodorants, all sorts of makeup products and exfoliants and things like that. So that's that first set of plastics. They're meant to be that way. They're designed to be used as a product. The second part, or the next ones, are known as secondary microplastics. And think of these as part of when the plastics break down. This is the pollution that we see. So they're the fragments. They're little tiny pieces that get out into our environment, right? And these happen with things that maybe get blown down the road, or they hit our waterways and they're broken down by the sun. They get smashed against different items in some mechanical fashion, or waves that break them down. Maybe some type of bacteria reacts with it and breaks it down. So that's that secondary one that's really concerning, right? As it gets out into our waterways and into the environment. These plastics don't degrade. They just get smaller and smaller and smaller in pieces. And really, as a result of kind of the issue that we have today with the pollution out in our environment. So it's quiz time. So let's go ahead and here, if you want to kind of play along, you can put it in the chat, but how many tons of microplastics are produced globally each year? So, from that primarily that primary side of it, how much are these used in our manufacturing, and what would be the total weight on that? I don't really see anything coming in the chat, so I'll just go ahead and jump ahead. 300 million tons. And so when you think about the small size of these and how plastics don't really have a lot of weight to them, it's an incredibly large volume of material for these microplastics that are being produced. So, here's a little bit about the issue of microplastics out into our environment. We live on the coast here in Sarasota, where we're located. We have canals and bays and the beautiful Gulf out there. So anything that gets out into there can be concerning, right? With this large amount of microplastics being produced annually, a lot of those products that they're made into or molded into are single-use plastic items. Those are items that are intended to be used one time and discarded. So they're not something that you're using over and over again. I'm sitting here using my mouse clicker right here. It's made of plastic, but I'm using it time after time after time. So that's some of the items, but a large portion of them are these single-use items that can often get out into our environment. These can become marine debris. This can happen for a lot of reasons, right? We just have this big storms that went through Florida. And so these storm runoffs can kind of take things out. They can get into our sewers and overflow. They can come from, our cars, our tires, even people littering and throwing things out the window. I'm sure there are other sources and methods that you might be able to put into the chat there. we see these all the time as we go. They just built down the road a gas station in my neighborhood right on the corner. And already I've seen kind of these single-use plastics on the side of the road and being blown down the road. So, anytime we develop and kind of build businesses and things like that, the chance of these things getting into our environment is increased, right? So, here are some of those other products that we have related to that, packaging, as I've mentioned, but building and construction sites, those produce a lot of materials that kind of get and go. I think if you live in one of our housing developments here and someone's building homes down the road from you, you see a lot of that construction debris and waste and plastic being not make it into the tended way. We mentioned transportation causing these sort of things, electronics, all sorts of different materials are sources of plastics that can potentially be some kind of microplastic moving forward. So thinking about, we had 300 million tons of just that microplastics being produced. How much of that, or what percent are by tons here, how many tons of microplastics actually entered into the waterways, into the oceans? So hopefully it's the lowest number, right? But let's take a look. So right there in the middle, they estimate about 14 million tons of these microplastics are not being discarded correctly. And for some reasons, they are entering into our environment, often into our waterways as we move forward. So it's a big issue about kind of control these things. And we'll talk a little bit more about ways we can do that here moving forward. Over to you, Maria.
Thanks, Randy. So think about this. Can you think of some common plastic products that we use in our homes every day? Maybe things that we don't even think about that they are plastic. Think about it for a moment. What did you do this morning? Did you go to your coffee maker? Is your coffee maker made of plastic? All right, so here are some things. This is just a very small general list of what we came up with. So beverage bottles, food bottles, jars, our food containers, cleaning containers and soap containers, especially now we can buy the boutique soaps that are that we place next to our sink. We just press and out comes the soap. It's a single-use container. But also, like in construction, some of our flooring and the pipes that we don't even see, plastic bags, cling wraps that we use to store food, but even some of our outdoor furniture is now made of plastic, as well as park benches, indoor furniture, lighting fixtures, indoor and outdoor paints that we don't even think would contain plastics in them do. Think about our shoes. Are they made of leather or are they, quote, man-made materials? And of course, our clothing, children's toys and pet toys, medical supplies, even the medical supplies that you might have in your home, like a Band-Aid, packaging and shipping supplies. When we receive those packages from mailed to us and we open up those containers, oftentimes they contain a lot of plastic. If you're wearing eyeglasses, are those made of plastic or any type of hygiene products? And can you think of others? If you want to jot some down into the chat of anything else. Tea bag. Good one. So packaging is essential for the marketing and distribution systems because packaging does perform several functions. One, it protects our food from light, heat, and oxygen, right? Because light, heat, and oxygen can increase or accelerate enzyme actions in a lot of our foods that we enjoy, especially our fresh fruits and vegetables. So we wrap them, protect them, so that they can last longer on the shelves for us to purchase. But also they protect us from a lot of food pathogens because of cross-contamination that can occur. as well as tampering. It preserves food and prevents food waste. It's kind of an oxymoron to, yes, it preserves food, prevents food waste, but all that packaging does enter in to our environment. And it protects products from being crushed, soiled, and even shoplifted. Next slide. Packaging is essential for marketing and distribution. It also informs our consumers how to use a product. So our laundry detergent or any type of new cleaning product that perhaps you purchased, it tells you how to store it. It tells you safety features. Should you be wearing a mask or gloves and so forth. But it also, and it also provides a warranty, allows easier for warehousing because they could stack these items nicer than just trying to put bottles next to each other. And of course, that's makes it easier to transport and distribute. And it can be handled with large-scale mechanical equipment. Next slide. And packaging is also an opportunity for marketing, right? Ready-to-eat packaging, single serving sizes, disposable and microwave packaging. It boosts sales and it encourages quantities of, purchasing multi-packs. They provide colorful designs. And how many of us have opened up a bag of chips or a box of cold cereal thinking we were getting that amount, only to find out that box of cereal was actually half full, right? So it makes the package look larger, and that's why we need to pay attention to price per ounce. But many times packaging is excessive, and excessive packaging, we know, wastes energy. It also wastes valuable materials, contributes to waste, and ultimately impacts our environment. Next slide, please. So here's just some quick things that we can do to use less packaging, cut back on plastics. Just be more mindful of what you're buying, what you're handling. Can I purchase this item in a different form? Try to avoid those single-serve packaging foods. A great example, and it's so easy, are yogurts, right? We can buy larger packaged yogurts and put them into smaller containers. Microwave only in glass or ceramic. We really shouldn't be microwaving in plastic itself because heat can cause plastic to release chemicals like BPAs. And so it's always good to use glass and ceramic and really try to avoid those plastic containers. Purchase larger quantities, like we said up above, and refill into smaller reusable containers. Use silverware instead of plastic for table setting and utensils. So replacing those plastic utensils that you might be using to stir your pots or to use in your frying pan with stainless steel utensils is a much better option. Cover your leftovers with a plate or bowl instead of using that plastic wrap, and get into that habit. Store food in glass containers with lids or reusable wrappers and use those sealable bags more than once. Wash them out, rinse them, let the air circulate inside, and use them over and over again. Limit the amount of plastic you use in your kitchen and home, and just avoid those individually wrapped items. And what really gets me are those individually wrapped potatoes. Okay, we can buy 5-pound sacks or 3-pound sacks of potatoes. We really don't need to have all that packaging around one potato. Next slide, please. So invest in natural fiber napkins. You know, people use those paper napkins. Yes, you can throw those away, but there are some napkins out there that actually do contain uh, nylon, which are a microfiber. Choose tap water over bottled water. And better yet, fill those stainless steel reusable water bottles with tap water. And create your own cleaning products with white vinegar and baking soda. I offer a whole class that talks about cleaning, green cleaning products or cleaning without chemicals. And we talk about not only that, but hoarding and, getting rid of properly, reusing, disposing, recycling, all those items we no longer need in our home. So we always want to reduce, reuse, and of course, recycle whenever possible. So here's one that maybe you don't always think about when, especially, how many times a year do you go out and buy sheets and linens or towels? But look for bedding made of natural fibers like cotton and linen. Better yet, a mixture of cotton and linen. And, there for a while, it was really difficult to find 100% cotton of anything. And now it is becoming more vogue, especially in our clothing, to find more cotton and linen in our clothing. But invest in reusable fabric shopping bags for your groceries and errands. And I know you already do that. But choose clothing made of natural fibers, cotton, hemp, linen, and wool. Now, of course, wool. You might think, well, Maria, you're in Florida. Yeah, I know. But those of you that live up north, and some people complain that wool is very itchy to the skin. But if you purchase wool with a blend like cotton or linen, it is actually very nice against the skin. Many people ask me, hemp, what? Wait a minute, hemp? That's not what I know hemp for, but hemp is actually a sustainable and environmentally friendly material made from the stems of hemp. And they take these stems and create long fibers. And, this hemp is also known for its durability, strength, and our clothes do contribute or are a major contributor to microplastic pollution. And when we think of athletic wear, it's lovely to wear athletic wear, our yoga pants and our jackets and so forth. But they too contribute because they're all made with polyester and nylon blends, and they contain those plastics. So a lot of times I'm asked, okay, so I'm not giving up my yoga pants, I'm not giving up my stretchy pants or whatever. What can I do? Well, you can buy these specific bags and wash your clothes in these bags that will collect some of those microbeads. But if you have the money to hire a plumber, you can also, and it's a much less common solution, but you can also install a microfiber filter in your washing machine to capture those microplastics before they enter the waterway systems. Now, that's an expensive alternative, and I'm sure that those filters do have a cost associated with them. I don't know how frequently you need to change those filters, but it might be something to look into if you are interested. Next slide, please. Randy, you're out.
Okay, thank you, Maria. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up, the clothing and washing of clothes because the athletic shirts that we use, the dry fit and those type of products, they contain plastic fibers that can go right out in the gray water of our washing machines. And, if you're on a septic system, that may drain directly into the bay here. So it's one of those big kind of challenging issues that you see out there is all those microfibers that kind of can get washed through because of those type of things. I wanted to point out real quickly, we've mentioned micro beads a few times in some of the products that we use. And I think it's important to kind of make a little distinction on some of those products. They were actually banned in an act called the Microbead Free Waters Act. It was passed in 2015, and it offered several years. I want to say up to 2018 was kind of a phase out, to phase these products out of, and alter them. It's important that the quote here I put below it, it prohibited the manufacturing, packaging, and distribution of rinse off cosmetic use of microbeads. So the products were considered rinse off, or they drained right away. There still may be some products out there that have those microbeads in them, and they would be more what they would consider a leave-on product. So when you think of a leave-on, think of makeup, lipstick, maybe a sunscreen has some in there, and different lotions and things like that. So if it can be applied onto you and stay on, it may still have some of these type of plastics in there. And the important words to look at there are polyethylene and polypropylene. So if you can get on and look at the label, you'll see it in there. That is plastic. It still has it in there. So I think most of the products have gone away with that, but there could be some subtle ones out there. So look for natural alternatives, things that are biodegradable if you encounter those type of products. All right, so what can we do at home? You know, we have all these products and all these plastics that we use all the time. And so I just want to go through a few of the do's and don'ts of kind of getting that end of life. What do we do when we're done with the products? So here's that plastics chart again that I kind of put up there, 1 through 7. And I just wanted to point out in Sarasota County, we have what is known as single stream recycling. So all our recycling products go into one bin, and it's automated and they pick it up. The county collects from the plastics numbers 1 through 7, with the exception of number 6, which is styrofoam. Okay, so you can't do that in that curbside bin. I would also point out that number 3, PVC piping, that's more of a construction material, a construction debris. They don't really want that in there as well. So, but the ones we encounter most for us would be number 1s and 2s and 5s. Those are the most common ones of all our packaging and products that we purchased. And those are the ones that obviously get more recycled in larger volumes. All right, so I mentioned single-use plastics several times, and Maria has as well. And those are those one-time use products. So any way we can kind of reduce and eliminate those, that's the best thing to do. We want to eliminate those things from getting out into our environment and breaking down into smaller fragments and becoming those secondary microplastics and impacting our environment. So whenever possible, try to pick things that don't have packaging of plastic. Maybe they come in, like Maria mentioned, in larger volumes, and you could divide those up. But any type of reusable containers, glass containers, anything you can do subtly to move away from some of those products is really, really great to do. So number 1, try to eliminate those single-use plastics. We always come across what we know, bubble wraps, right? We order stuff online. We get stuff delivered to our offices. We have lots and lots of these type of plastic bubble wraps, containers, plastic of all sorts. These often will say on them that they are recyclable. They'll have a little triangle there. They'll typically but a number 2 or a number 4 plastic. So the plastic bags you may get at the grocery store, it'll have a number 2 on it. You cannot put these items into your curbside bins. They cause a lot of problems in the machines at the processor there. So what you want to do is make sure you get those and kind of keep those separated. I do it at the office. I have a bin where we put all these bubble wraps in from everybody's material. I do it at home, and then I can take those items to a grocery store drop off. So we have those at Publix and Winn-Dixie's and different stores like that. Have those bins when you walk in as a great way to kind of reduce some of those single-use bubble wrap materials. If you can reuse them a few times, that'd be great too. But if not, we want to keep those out of the curbside. The other thing that happens is a lot of those type of items will get blown away when the trucks dump them in and they get down the roadways and things like that. So that's a common thing. We see a lot of plastic bags and these films get out into our environments. They are a major, major contributor to our microplastic because they get in the water, they dry out, and then they break up. If you've ever tried to pick one of those up at the curbside, in the curb or a ditch, it's dried out and it's in little pieces and it's difficult to do. So kind of coming up with a new way of recycling these items is a really, really great practice to put into your office or at home. There's those plastic bags I just mentioned. I mentioned that they come in a number 2 plastic, sometimes number 4. Even though they say recycling, we need to take them to that alternative thing. That's Sarasota County's policy. It's probably going to be the policy of most of around here in Florida. If you're logged in from somewhere else, another state, check on those regulations there. They could be different. But generally, most of those processors don't want you to put your recycling all into that little bag and then put that into the recycling. It kind of slows down the process and contributes to a lot of the contamination. Styrofoam, right? So here's a big one. Styrofoam just really doesn't get recycled anywhere. It's a number 6 plastic. When it gets out into our environment, it breaks down into smaller and smaller pieces. It blows around everywhere. Those little beads can just go wild. So you got to be really careful when you throw it away. Even when you throw it into your normal trash, if you wanted to do that, make sure it's not going to kind of spill out into the road when they pick up your containers and things like that. So you want to make sure it's really contained. It is easily one of the major contributors to microplastic waste in our coastal environments that we have. Now, the reason styrofoam doesn't get recycled very often is because it's incredibly cheap to make new styrofoam products. So if there was a curbside collector and you could separate that out, it would cost somebody more to come pick that item up, transport it, melt it down into new material to make new items. So it's much cheaper just to make new raw virgin styrofoam versus kind of repurposing it. It does happen though, and they do it at one of the grocery stores here and some of the places like just with the plastic bags. You can take your styrofoam containers, the meat trays. There still is some eggs, I guess, in the styrofoam, although I've seen them move away to the more the cardboard now. Collect those, clean them off, and take those and to the drop-off places at the store because they are able to pick those up they're already doing that transportation route, so they can take it back to the location and they melt those down into new items and things like that. So styrofoam, it is recyclable, not curbside, but make a plan of kind of collecting and dropping it off. That'll really help reduce some of those, the chance of it getting up into the environment because it's so light and it blows everywhere. The last thing is just kind of decluttering, outdoor items. We just had some big storms come through the state of Florida. A lot of things got blown all over. So all those outdoor items, outdoor chairs, those old chairs kind of break down and they get brittle, plastic kind of Adirondack chairs, children's toys, they're out there with buckets and shovels and different things like that. That stuff dries out, it cracks, birds can kind of come down and pick that stuff up. They think it's a food item and it ultimately becomes smaller and smaller and smaller and will drain off into our waterways. So just that decluttering and picking up around your yard and yard waste is a great thing to get involved with. That's a big contributor. The day after trash pickup is a good day to kind of walk your lawn and you're in the area out by the curb, because I always see bags and films and packaging and things like that get dumped in and they don't quite make it into the right container, into the truck. So that's a good little practice to kind of get into as well. So I had a video that I got from the World Wildlife Foundation, and it really showed the plastics on the beach, but it's a little depressing. I won't lie. It's really a big issue. There's a lot of those type of videos out there if you want to kind of look at them and the coastal cleanups and the plastics that are in our ocean. But I kind of chose instead to just kind of reflect on maybe a few things you can do easy plastic-free eco swaps. Some of them we touched on today, but here's a few more. Hopefully this works. All right. Well, there's a couple of good ones in there. I love the ice cream cone, right? You use an ice cream cone instead of a container. But the other one I wanted to point out there, they showed those bio bags as an option for, trash bag alternatives. I've used those for composting and different things with that. The one issue with those is they're very thin and they kind of break apart. Not always the best product in that sense. If you have like a box or something, it can really break those really easily. So if you do something in that road, you really need to be careful if you kind of pull those out because they could break and dump stuff all over with that.
Thanks,
right.
Randy. I'm glad you told me about that. I like the idea of those biodegradable bags. I am going to try for myself to see what I can do here in my own home. But here's some 5 takeaways. Be proactive, make more proactive choices. Think about when you pick up a product, where will this plastic container, bottle, and so forth, where is it going to end up? Make smarter choices. So those single-use plastics that we talked about, and just be more mindful, plastic water bottles versus reusable water bottles. And, sometimes we will end up paying a little bit more for items that are biodegradable, like a bamboo toothbrush or those biodegradable plastic bags. But in the long run, they're worth it. Dispose used items correctly. Do they have to go into the landfill? Can you recycle them? And just remember to always reduce. Think about what you're buying, what's in your hand that you're about to buy. Can you use a different product instead? Reuse or repurpose. And think about, too, donating used items. We don't recommend that you just go out and get rid of things, throw things out just to start all fresh again. Think about how you can donate those used items or repurpose sometimes those used items. And we do have a lot of classes coming up and webinars. The next class that's the companion to this is ways to reduce plastic pollution in our waterways. And that's this Thursday, same time, 12 o'clock. But we also have simple ways to reduce plastics at our home. We've recorded this. Randy's doing an in-person event. If any of you happen to live in Sarasota or near Venice, it's the same class as this, only in person. I teach cleaning without chemicals. It's a webinar. And also Randy teaches reducing plastics, and that too, all of these things are listed on our Eventbrite system. So think about how you can get involved. Keep Sarasota County Beautiful hosts several countywide cleanup events throughout the year, including the Great American Cleanup, which a specific date has not been announced, but there's also the Liberty Litter Cleanup, the International Coastal Cleanup. So search in your community. These are just what's going on, some of these here, but the international, of course, is all over the country and world. But look into your community, see what is available, things that you can do to clean up. And maybe it's something as simple as, you know, taking a walk, like Randy mentioned, and seeing that there was litter or debris and picking that up and throwing it out. And we have, of course, a Florida Microplastic Awareness Project that's going on, which is how these two series classes got organized and so forth and presented to you, so that we can all become more aware of our purchases and how our purchases and our decisions impact our environment. Randy, I think we hit it right on time with 12:45.
Perfect.
Thank you to everybody. Again, I see some familiar names. Thank you so much for supporting our programming and for joining us today. We do appreciate that. And if you do have any other questions, you can always find us on our website, Randy and myself. And I do hope you consider taking the next class on Thursday that deals with the plastics in our waterways.
All right. Take care.